מניחו ושמחו, אוי אוי מניחו ושמחו, מניחו ושמחו, אוי 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 לעידים, מניחו ושמחו, אוי לעידים, יבואו שבוסוים, יבואו מחמודים, יום שבוסוים, יום מחמודים, אוי ואי אוי ואי אוי אוי אוי, יבואו מחמודים. שוי ורב וזוי שלום, שנה וזוי שלום, חיים ומגידים, אוי כי לשיר
Shabbos. Oy vay, oy vay, oy vay, oy vay, oy vay, oy vay, Shabbos. Na 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 moy oy oy. Emi yitzvah vavas Shabbos. Oy vay, oy, bemi yitzvah Shabbos. Oy vay, Shabbos. Oy vay, oy vay, oy vay, oy vay, oy vay, oy vay, Shabbos. Bemi yitzvah vavas Shabbos. Oy vay, oy, 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 oy. Na 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 na, oy, 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 oy. Kaye ye ye liach litzah.
Shalom, my dear friends. Shalom today, the 8th day of the month of Iyar, the year 5777, corresponding to the 4th of May of the year 2017. Welcome back to our studies, and today we have more amazing sections of the book of Job and a whole new direction in Masechet Shabbat with the help of God. So let's begin now with our studies in the Tanakh, in the book of Job, chapter 27. Shalom today, the 8th day of the month of Iyar of the year 5777, corresponding to the 4th of May of the year 2017. And today we embark on Sefer Iyov, the book of Job, chapter 27, which continues where Job had left off in the previous chapter. It is actually a new parasha in the Hebrew text, but since there were no responses from any of the three companions, they were all now already silenced. Therefore, Job continues to take up his parable. And as this section will develop, we shall see just how intricate and beautiful this parable is, with its many metaphors evoking the profundities of chokhmah, of wisdom, as we go further. But before we get to that, let us now take up chapter 27 in the Hebrew text from the beginning of the chapter. Chapter 27, verse 1, Vayosef Iyov Seis Misholo Vayomar. Vayosef, he increased. Iyov, Job, added Seis Misholo, carrying out his, carrying his parable. The word Seis also has the connotation, I believe, of prophecy and Holy Spirit that is coming into Job and lifting him up as he lifts up and elevates his parable, as we shall see in the continuation. But before he does that, he's going to protest once again his innocence and express how his companions have got him wrong and are therefore wrong in the eyes of God because they are holding an innocent person to be wicked as the only explanation for his suffering. They've not grasped his question, which is, why do the righteous suffer? So in verse 2, he makes an oath to God. He swears by the name of God. That is the connotation of the opening word of verse 2. Chai-el. Heisir mishpoti v'shadai heimar nafshi. The subject of the verb heisir is Kel, God. Kel heisir mishpoti. God has turned aside my judgment. He has turned aside the justice of my cause. V'shadai, the Eternal One, heimar nafshi, he has embittered my soul. So the Hebrew word chai at the beginning, the living God, well, this is an expression in Hebrew for an oath. He is invoking the Hebrew name of God. The essential name is Kel. When Kel is joined with Chai, Kel Chai, that connotes the Sephirah of Yesod. Kel in itself is on the right-hand side. It has the connotation of the Sephirah of Chesed at the top of the 7 lower Sephirot. But when it's Kel Chai, that is the invocation of the attribute of Yesod, which is Tzaddik, which is bound up with the covenant, and an appropriate invocation for Job to swear by God's name. We see in Genesis, in the story of Joseph, how Joseph swears to his brothers by the name of Pharaoh, but only of God can it be said, Chai, he is truly living. So Job is saying, by the living God. And our sages learned out from here that Job indeed, through this oath in the name of God, showed that he served God out of love. This is a saying of Rabbi Yehoshua in the Talmud. From here we learn that Job served God out of love, because a person does not take an oath by the life of the king unless he loves the king. So Job is indeed invoking God's presence as the living proof of his own justice. And he continues in verse 3, Ki chol od nishmosi vi v'ruach Eloah be'api. Ki chol od, for all that there is yet just a little left of nishmosi, my soul, be in me. V'ruach Eloah, the breath and the spirit of God, be'api, in my nostril. As long as I will be alive, here lovers of Rabbi Nachman and his teaching of Azamra lelokai be'odi, where the word odi is the same word here, od, kichol od, even if only just a little bit yet is left of my soul in me. Im tedabirno sefosai avlo. This is what he's swearing to. Im tedabirno sefosai avlo, uleshoni im yege remio. He takes an oath of the curse that would come to him if im tedabirno, if they shall speak, sfatai, if my lips shall speak, avlo, evil and corruption. Uleshoni im yege remio, or if my tongue will pronounce treachery. Cholilo li im atzdik eschem ad egvo, lo osir tumosi mimeni. Holilo li, far away be it from me. It would be chulin, it would be profane if I were im atzdik, if I will justify eschem, you, my companions, ad egvo, until I expire, lo osir tumosi mimeni. I shall not turn aside my unblemished purity from me. He will not agree to the depiction of his companions that he must have some flaw if he is suffering in this way. And indeed, if that were so, this would undermine the entire book. The entire book is addressing the subject of why do the truly righteous suffer. So if he were anything less than righteous, the whole book would fall on its face. And here Job testifies it is not true. He will not even, for the sake of pacifying his friends, they've come to comfort him, but he has to pacify them. He will not justify them. He will not agree with their depiction of him, as he will go on in ensuing chapters about his pathway in the life of this world. Continuing now in verse 6. B'tzidkosi hechezakti v'lo arapeho lo yecheraf levovi miyomoi. B'tzidkosi, in my righteousness, hechezakti, have I held. V'lo arapeho, I shall not make it become soft and weak. Lo yacharaf lovovi miyomoi. My heart shall not it's hard to give a quick translation of this word yecharaf. His heart has never brought him to shame, to cherpo, on account of any of the deeds that he may have done in his lifetime. He's held by his path of righteousness. Lo yecheraf lovovi. My heart has never protested, that is to say, his conscience was never aroused by anything he may ever have done, mi yomoi, in all of my days. So this follows the explanation of Rashi on that verse, on those words. The Metzudat simply paraphrases the word yeharaf as turning aside. That is to say, Job is saying, the justices that I did, never ever did I do it in an accidental way whenever chance might bring some deed of righteousness to me. It was a whole path of righteousness to which he held all the time, he is saying, and he never allowed his he held to this path with the full strength of his heart. He never weakened in his heart, and he never turned aside from his heart, never turned aside from this all of his days. Verse 7, Yehi cherosha oyevi umiskomami cha'avol. Yehi cherosha oyevi. Let my enemy be like a wicked person. Umiskomami cha'avol. And the one that stands up against me like an evil person. Here Job is attesting to the strength of his rectitude, that so abhorrent to him was any kind of evil or corruption that he would only wish his enemy, an enemy of such a one as him that was righteous, that he should be like a rasha. That for Job would be the worst possible depiction of his enemy, that his enemy was a rasha, a wicked person, so abhorrent was any thought of evil to him. Ki ma tikvas chonif ki yivtso ki yeshel Eloah nafsho. Ki ma tikvas chonif. For what is the hope of a liar, of a flatterer, one who does things for the sake of appearances? Ki yivtso, if he will gain some material profit from his deed. Ki yeshel Eloah nafsho, when God will cause his soul to drop like a leaf that drops off the tree. Now these words of Job can be taken as they are by some of our commentators as a critique of his companions, who he is accusing here of lying, in the sense of being denying that the whole issue of the righteous suffering exists, by insisting that Job must have done something wrong to deserve all of this suffering. But he protests that it is not so. Rashi's interpretation of these words, Ma tikvas chonef, what is the hope of the chanef, the liar? Why should I be a wicked person and a robber? What is the end of the wicked person that steals money, when God will cast down his soul from upon him? In other words, Job here is protesting his innocence and setting forth the truth that he would have no benefit whatever from any wickedness on his part. It is not that he denies what the companions have been affirming all the time, that the wicked have their downfall. And as we shall see, Job himself presents in this chapter how the wicked have their eventual downfall. What is troubling him more is why the righteous are suffering in this world, but it is not that he would have any thought of embracing the path of wickedness if that could let him off suffering in the world. What will the wicked person's lies and treachery avail him? Verse 9. Hatza'akoso Yishma'el Kisovo Olov Tzoro. A question, Hatza'akoso, is it that his cry, the cry of the wicked person that lies to God, Yishma'el, will God hear that person's cry? Kisovo Olov Tzoro, when there shall come upon him trouble. Im al Shaddai yis'anog yikro Eloah b'chol eis. Would this person, such a person, al Shaddai yis'anog, would he have delight upon Shaddai, the eternal God? Yikro Eloah, would he call to God b'chol eis, in every situation? That is not Job's way. His way is not the way of a wicked person that would have simply not be crying out to God and depending upon God, or have no joy in God. So now Job is going to open up a new dimension which goes beyond the worldview of the companions. Ore eschem beyad il Asher im Shaddai lo achahed. Ore eschem, I shall teach you, I shall illumine you, biyad il, through the hand of God. Asher im Shaddai lo achahed. That which is with God I shall not deny. That is to say, in the paraphrase of the Mitzudat David, my words are not intended to seduce people aside into choosing wickedness. I'm simply teaching you the form of government that is in the hand of God. And I shall not hold back from saying that which is with God, in order that the suffering of the righteous should not be accounted to be some wrongdoing, God forbid, on the part of God. When Metzudat David is saying that, when Job is saying that everything, the fate of the righteous and the wicked in this world depends upon an implacable heavenly mechanism of government, when he says that, that is not to cast some blemish, God forbid, above, because even though that may be the case, that the righteous suffered while the wicked apparently have prosperity, even so, concludes the Metzudat David explaining this verse, even so it is still proper for the righteous to choose the path of righteousness. And as Job will allude to, because after the departure of the soul from this world, he knows that God is just. What is perplexing him is the apparent injustice in this world. So continuing now, Job attacking those companions, verse 12. Hein atem kulechem hazisem velomo ze hevel tehbolu. Indeed, hein atem kulechem, indeed, you, all of you, chazisem, you have seen these things that I'm going to be telling you about. Velomo ze, why, therefore, this that you have been saying, hevel, this vanity, this vapor that you have been bringing forth, this doubled use of the root hevel, you've been spouting, vaporizing vapor with your words. Again, the paraphrase of the Metzudat David. He says, indeed, everybody knows that the destruction of the wicked is a well-known fact, and you've all certainly seen this, and I certainly cannot deny what is evidential to everybody. Why, therefore, do you speak out this vanity to consider that I am choosing wickedness? And in the continuation, he will express until the end of this chapter exactly what he knows to be the ultimate end and downfall of the wicked. Verse 13. Ze chilek odom rosho im eil, v'nahalas oritzim mishadai yikohu. Ze chilek odom rosho. This, as follows in the following verses, this is the share of Odom Rasha, the wicked man, Emael, one who is wicked with God. V'nahalas oritzim, this is the inheritance of the mighty, Mishadai Yikochu, those that abuse their mighty power. This is the inheritance in the verses that follow, which these mighty people shall take from the eternal God. Verse 14. Im yirbu vonov, lomo chorev, v'tze'tza'ov, lo yisbi'u lohem. Im yirbu vonov, even if the wicked person's children will multiply, lomo chorev, to them the sword is destined to come. V'tze'tza'ov, his offspring, his descendants, lo yisbi'u lochem, they shall not have the satisfaction of bread. They will go hungry despite all of his pillaging to secure his own and the future of his house. It will all be frustrated. Seridov bamoves yikoveru, V'almanosov lo sivkeno. Sridov, his survivors, bamoves yikoveru, in death shall they be buried. Interesting to speculate why we need both of. Does it mean that they're going to be buried alive, or that in any event they're not destined for life? Rashi says on this verse, "Bamovis yikoveru," with death shall they be buried. He says they shall die through suffering and illnesses, to the point that the widows of the wicked will be happy at their death and they will not weep. Ve'almanosov lo sivkeno, his widows will not weep. Im yitzbor ke'ofor kosef v'chachomer yochin malbush. Im yitzbor, if he shall gather together, ke'ofor kosef, like the dust, if he amasses silver, v'chachomer, like the mud and the clay, yochin malbush, he shall prepare garments. Yochin v'tzadik yilbosh, v'chesef noki yachalok. Yochin v'tzadik yilbosh, he may prepare it, but the righteous will wear the clothing. V'chesef noki yachalok, the silver, it shall be the clean and innocent that shall distribute it, take their share. Verse 18, Bono ho'osh beiso, uchesuko oso notzir. Bono ho'osh beiso. Bono, he built like the moth, the worm, the caterpillar of the moth or some other worm builds his house, which is so fragile and which will soon be gone. Uchesuko oso noitzer, like the protective hut made by the notzer, by the guardian of the field or the orchard, standing guard over the fruits, like this temporary hut for the brief harvesting season till the fruits and the produce are taken in. Only temporary will be whatever he constructs. Oshir yishkav velo yeosef, einov pokach ve'einenu. Oshir yishkav, he may lie down in his wealth. Velo yeosef, he shall not die, that is to say that he will be suffering all kinds of chastisements before his death. Einov pokach ve'einenu, he will suddenly open his eyes and then he is not, he will be swept away, it says Metzudat, down to hell and destruction. Tasigehu chamayim balohos, lailo gnovatu sufo. Tasigehu chamayim balohos, like water shall catch up with him the balohos. The balohos is explained by some as terrors, others explain it as demons. Well, the demons are terrifying, from the same letters of the root behala, consternation and utter confusion and horror. Lailo gnovatu sufo, Lilo, by night, Genovatu Sufo, the storm wind will steal that wicked individual away. Yisoehu kodim vayilach, v'yisoarehu mimkomo. Yisoehu kodim, the east wind will then take him up, vayilach, and go away. V'yisoarehu mimkomo. The root of so'ar here is turbulence, like the storm wind, the raging storm wind will take him up in a great tempest from his place. Vayashlich olo v'lo yahmol. Vayashlich olov v'lo yahamol. He shall cast down upon him. That is the implied subject of this verb, casting down. God casting down his hailing tempests of suffering upon this wicked soul. V'lo yahmol. He shall not have mercy. Miyodo Boroach yivroch. From his hand he shall be surely trying to flee. That is to say that Miyodo Boroach yivroch, the Metzudat explains that everything he formerly had in his hand, all his wealth and power, all that shall flee away from him. Yispok olemo chapemo v'yishrok olov mimkomo. Yispok, this is an expression of clapping one's hands. People on the terrible tale of his utter downfall, people will clap their hands in dismay and acknowledgement of the justice of God. V'yishrok olav mimakomo. People will whistle, shrok. They'll whistle in amazement upon him, mimkomo, from the place where now he is, down there in his hell. So Job, in this previous chapter, has made it very clear that he fully accepts and understands that the wicked will suffer, and they do not have any mercy from God. That is not his issue, as summed up in the words of our commentators here about what is the import of what Job has been saying here. He's saying that even though the wicked person is going to have this destruction, and the wicked person is just as subject to the chances of this world as the righteous is, nevertheless, he knows that the wickedness is wickedness. And why would he choose wickedness? Because the difference between the wicked and the righteous is that for all of the suffering of the righteous in this world, never the righteous will have the spiritual delight of proximity to God, which the wicked will not have. And that will lead Job into the continuation, which in the Hebrew text is not a new parasha, even though between chapter 27 and chapter 28 we have a break in the printed Bibles. However, in the original Hebrew written manuscripts, there is no break between these two sections, but Job is now in the next chapter going to go off explaining the great preciousness of wisdom above all of any possible material acquisition in this world. And so he is going in the very beautiful evocation in the chapter that will follow to express his absolute embrace of the path of wisdom, which is the path of seeking knowledge of the Creator. So with that, my dear friends, we'll conclude now today's study of Mikra, of the Tanakh of Job, and come back in a few moments for studying our new chapter in the Mishnah, chapter 12 of Mishnah Shabbos.
מניחו ושמחו אוי אוי מניחו ושמחו מניחו ושמחו אוי 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 לעידים מניחו ושמחו אוי לעידים יבואו שבוסוין יבואו מחמודים יום שבוסוין יום מחמודים אוי ואי אוי ואי אוי 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 יבואו מחמודים
שוי וזויך לו שנה וזויך לו מים ומהינים אוי כי לשישו אוי בריאים ולעיינים
Zwei Schumayim Eretz v'yamim
שמאי 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 אוי ארץ וימים אוי כל ציבור מורים כל ציבור מורים אוי גבוהים אוי מרומים פעמים ויודום וחייס וימים יוי ביי ביי יוי ביי ביי יוי ביי יוי ביי פעמים ויודום וחייס וימים דרירי ביי יוי ביי יוי 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 יוי
Ahoy Kamen v'yudam Oy 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 Kamen v'yudam V'chayas v'yayimim Yivkashem tziroy lumim
יהי השני בן לים סגילו אסור שהוא מוילה קדשוי מי בואי ויעשי סוי לה 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 Oy Shabbos kodesh yom chemdusoy oy vay oy vay vay oy vay oy vay oy 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 vay yom chemdusoy oy Shabbos kodesh yom chemdusoy yom chemdusoy na 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 moy vay oy vay yom chemdusoy Shabbos kodesh yom chemdusoy yom chemdusoy na 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 moy oy la 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 moy la 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 oy 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 ay la 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 moy la 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 oy shuvas shuvas kayim mikol Shabbos. Oy vay, oy vay, oy vay, oy vay, b'mitzvahs Shabbos. B'mitzvahs Shabbos. Oy vay, oy vay, oy vay, oy vay, b'mitzvahs Shabbos. Oy vay, oy vay, oy vay, oy vay, oy vay, oy vay, Shabbos. Na 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 moy oy oy. Emi yitzvah vavas Shabbos. Oy vay, oy, bemi yitzvah Shabbos. Oy vay, Shabbos. Oy vay, oy vay, oy vay, oy vay, oy vay, oy vay, Shabbos. Bemi yitzvah vavas Shabbos. Oy vay, oy, 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 oy. Na 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 na, oy, 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 oy. Kaye ye ye liach litzah.
Shalom again, my dear friends. Shalom. Let us now come to our Mishnah section of our daily studies today. Shalom. Today, the 8th day of the month of Iyar of the year 5777, corresponding to the 4th of May of the year 2017. And we come now to chapter 12 of Tractate Shabbat, which begins in a new direction from the theme of almost very much of the tractate until this point, which although we touched on issues of cooking on the Shabbat or having hot food on the Shabbat, we touched upon lighting the candles of Shabbat and related issues, but most of the time we were concerned with the labor of carrying on the Shabbat, and we were discussing for several chapters the specific minimal measure of different kinds of things that a person might take across the threshold from the house out into the street to be liable for having violated the prohibition against carrying on the Shabbat. It could be as small as a minute quantity of food or animal fodder the size of the mouth of a kid goat, to make one liable for a sin offering. And the continuation of our tractate deals with many of the other labors of Shabbat. Not every single one of the 39 labors of Shabbat is discussed in detail. That is left for the discussions in the Talmud, expanding on and extrapolating from our Mishnah in Tractate Shabbat, and is the central subject of the writings on the laws of Shabbat by the later poskim, by the adjudicators of Torah law, the codifiers, who go in detail into each one of the 39 labors. However, our Mishnah is the Rashi Prakim, the chapter headings, as it were, of all of the different subjects. And we shall in our present chapter be going through a number of different melachot, and once again being interested in what is the minimal measure that a person would have to do in order already to be liable for having transgressed the Shabbat by performing that minimal action on the Shabbat. What counts already as an action, as a melacha? And that is what our Mishnah proceeds to discuss now as we enter into chapter 12, the first Mishnah. Haboine, the builder, kamo yivne v'yei chayov. Somebody who's building, how much would the person have to build to be liable already if it were done on Shabbat without realizing it was the Shabbat, to be liable to a sin offering? Haboine kol shehu, somebody that builds, it could be the smallest amount. Well, building could be as little as simply plugging up a hole in the wall with some plaster. As soon as the plaster, which was separate from the building that is attached to the ground, as soon as the plaster is attached to the building, it adds to the building, and therefore even for such a minimal amount of labor, it is obvious and clear that if one built a brick wall on the Shabbat, there would certainly be a violation of the prohibition against building. But here the Mishnah is interested in the smallest measure that counts as such an action, and that would be as little as kol shehu, the smallest amount of adding to an existing structure. You don't have to build from scratch. If there was an existing building and one added a stone or a brick, that would already make him liable if it were done on Shabbat without realizing it as the Shabbat. V'hamasatis, the same with the masates. This is the stone mason who is dressing the stones, who is chiseling away the stones to bring them into shape and to make them decorative for building for building purposes. V'hamakeh bapatish, likewise somebody who strikes a blow with a hammer. Uvama'atzod, also if it were with a smaller axe. In all of these cases, likewise, hakodeach, if somebody were drilling, kol shehu chayov. In each case, it is a the smallest amount would make the person liable for a sin offering if done on the Shabbat unwittingly. Ze aklol, here is the general rule. Kol ha'oise melacha, everybody who carries out one of the melachot, one of the 39 forbidden labors on the Shabbat. Umelachto miskayemes b'Shabbos, and the effects of his labor endure on the Shabbat. This is not something that is merely temporary. It's something that has the ability to stay there. It's not merely something transient. That person would already be liable for a sin offering if that were performed on the Shabbat unwittingly. I would like to go back to the concept of hamakeh b'patish. The simple meaning of the term hamakeh b'patish is to strike a blow with a hammer, an example of which would be after one that is hewing out rocks from a mine might first of all cut around a part of a rock that he wishes to detach to take as a stone, and after the initial cutting is ready, he will strike a blow with a mighty hammer, and that is what will separate this stone from the mother rock to which it was attached. So the concept of hamakeh b'patish is actually striking the last blow of any piece of labor, be it the labor of a blacksmith who's hammering a pot into shape. All the time that the pot is not yet in shape, he's not yet completed the work of making the pot, but there will come a moment when he'll strike the last hammer blow to the pot, and that will complete the labor of making the pot. So that is this phrase, striking with a hammer, is the archetypal phrase for any labor, is the final last step in the completion of that labor. A makeh b'matzad will be somebody using a smaller axe for their work. Kodeach would be somebody who is drilling a hole for some constructive purpose. Well, now we come to the continuation of the first Mishnah, a difference of opinion between Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel and the other sages. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel oimer, af amake bekurnos ala sadon b'sh'as melocho. Even a craftsman that struck a blow with his mallet on the block, on the anvil, at the time of his labor, chayov, he would be liable to a sin offering for this, because he is, as it were, contributing to the completion of his labor. What is happening here is that we're talking about a labor that was used in the sanctuary built by Moses in the wilderness, where much of the sanctuary was overlaid with gold. And in order to do this, the gold would actually physically be hammered into to thin sheets. Same was also necessary for cutting the very thin strands of gold that were twined in with the other colorful threads of the high priest's garments, and also the drapes of the sanctuary with their scarlet and their purple and their blue. There would be a thread of gold there as well. So that was made by hammering out the gold and dividing it into strips. Well, now, in the labor of hammering the gold metal being hammered out into an ever thinner strip, the craftsman would from time to time have to actually beat the hammer on a block in order to straighten out any kinks that had appeared in the hammer during his work of hammering the gold. So even though he is hammering not the gold but the block in order to prepare the mallet for hammering the gold itself, Rabban Gamliel considers the striking of the hammer on the block to smooth it out to be an integral part of this labor, and if this were performed on the Shabbat without the person's being aware that it was Shabbat, he'd be liable to a sin offering. The other sages dispute Rabban Gamliel's assertion. They hold that the only part of the actual labor of striking with a kunus mallet is when he's actually striking the gold. And even though striking on the block is preparatory for striking on the gold, it is not considered the actual labor itself. And the halacha is like the sages against Rabban Gamliel. So now we go, without further ado, without going into all the fine details of building houses and putting roofs on them, and how we already leave the subject of building to go to some agricultural labors. The first of all of the 39 labors is achoresh. Achoresh kol shehu, somebody that is plowing the ground. No matter how small amount he might actually make some kind of incision into the ground, he would already be liable for violation of the Shabbat through performing that labor unwittingly on the Shabbat. Hamenakesh is somebody who is pulling out weeds from the sides of the vegetables in his vegetable garden in order to stop them draining the strength of the vegetables that he wants. So he pulls up the weeds. Well, now, here in the labor of choresh, where he's preparing the ground for sowing the seeds, and menakesh, where he's pulling up the weeds to enable the other plants that he does want to grow, we have the first two of the 39 halachot. The choresh is mentioned explicitly, plowing. Menakesh, why is he doing this labor? Normally, pulling up a plant from where it's growing from is a violation of the labor of kotzer, of harvesting. But here he's not interested in pulling up the weeds. Here he's pulling up the weeds for the purpose of enabling the plants that he does want, his vegetables, to grow better. And therefore, this is considered to be actually a tolada, a derivative of the labor of zorea, through which one sows a seed, because it makes no difference whether you sow the seed in the soil or you water it or you do whatever is necessary to promote its growth. These are all come under the general heading of zorea, of sowing the seed. They're all designed to with the intent of making the plant grow, and therefore zorea itself, putting the seed in the soil, that is the av malacha, the father generic labor. But menakesh, where he's pulling up the weeds to make the plants, his desired plants, grow better, that is a derivative, a tolada, one of the derivative generations or descendants of the archetypal father malacha of seeding. The same applies to what he's doing in the coming labors mentioned by the Mishnah. V'hamakarsem. Makarsem is somebody who is pulling off some of the dry branches from a tree, because that also promotes the growth of the healthy parts of the tree. And a mezored is also coming under the category of zorea. It's a tolada, derivative of zorea. He is cutting off new shoots that have come out of the tree, which are actually draining strength from the mother tree. So he trims them in order to let the tree grow better. And in all of these cases, the minimal measure of the performance of the malacha is kol shehu, the smallest amount. So now we come to other malachot of Shabbat. Hamalakit eitzim. If somebody is collecting wood from the field, Yim lesakin kol shehein. If his intent is to fix the field, that is to say, he wants to prepare it for plowing, and if that was his purpose, if his purpose was for the field itself, kol shehein, then that is the smallest amount that he does. If he's picking out the small shoots that are growing out of the tree by its roots, if his purpose in cutting them is for the growth of the tree, then the smallest amount would only make him liable. But if his intent in cutting the wood was something different, im lehesek, if the intention of his action of cutting the wood was to stoke his fire, kedei levashel beitzot kalo, the amount he would have to cut down already in order to make him liable for the performance of the malacha would be sufficient to be able to cook a light egg. That is a hen's egg, which is called a light egg, which cooks relatively quickly. A small amount of wood will be sufficient to cook it. So we see here that the intent of the action is of prime importance in determining what the necessary minimal measure would be, because we are talking about, in the case of these 39 malachas, these labors, malacha machashevet, an action that is performed with a purpose. So if as we see in these two examples of collecting wood, one and the same action can carry with it a minimal measure which is different from some other measure depending upon the intent of the person performing the action. Hamalaket eitzim. Likewise, somebody who is gathering hamalakit asovim, somebody who is gathering herbs or grasses. Im lesakin kol shehu, if his purpose is to fix his field, to let the surrounding plants grow better, then the measure is kol shehu. The smallest amount that he performs will make him liable to the labor. But if he was picking the herbs out of the field, the grasses, for his kid goat or any other animal, then it would have to be kimalo pi hagedi. He'd have to pull up sufficient to fill the mouth of the kid goat in order to make him liable for having violated the Shabbos. If he pulled up any less than that, he would not be liable, because he would not have fulfilled the labor in its full measure. So now directly we jump over to a different subject, a different labor entirely, and the Mishnah is not here following the order of discussing all of these different labors in the order of the list that we had at in an earlier chapter. The Mishnah here is continuing with picking one labor after another according to an order that was determined by the author of the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, Rabbi Judah the Prince, and we will follow his guidance going now into the labor of writing. Yes, writing itself on the Shabbat is considered to be a forbidden labor. We abstain from any kind of writing on Shabbat, but the Mishnah is going to be speaking particularly about the writing of the letters of the Hebrew language, and what will be the or any other letters. But we are talking about a professional mode of writing the letters as opposed to some scribble. A scribble that might be recognizable to the person himself but not to others does not come into the category of hakotev as such in the narrower definition of the term. We would call it perhaps writing when we scribble notes. However, the Mishnah, in talking about this labor, is talking about what would be the minimum one would have to write of a legible script to make one liable for a sin offering if one did it unwittingly on the Shabbat. One would not have to write an entire letter or an entire document. Hakosev shetei oisios, sufficient if the person wrote 2 letters. Bein biyamino, bein bismolo, whether he wrote them with his left hand or with his right hand. Bein mishem echod, whether the 2 letters that he wrote had the same name. If they were both called Aleph, he wrote 2 Alephs on the page. Bein mishnei shemos, or if they were of 2 different names, if they were letters of the Aleph Bet that had different names, Aleph and a Bet. No matter what, they would still be carrying a liability of a sin offering for doing this on the Shabbat. Ben biyamino, ben bismolo, let's just go back on that section, whether with his right hand or his left hand. A person that is right-handed is not considered to be writing in the proper manner if that person writes with their left hand. If that is not their normal hand to write with, then although it is forbidden to write with one's left hand on the Shabbat, that will be called for a right-handed person to write with their left hand kila achar yad, in a back-handed way. And although a backhanded manner of performing a labor is forbidden on the Shabbat, it does not carry with it the liability of a sin offering. But a right-handed person will be liable for a sin offering if he wrote with his right hand on Shabbat. A left-handed person that wrote on the Shabbat with his left hand or her left hand would also be liable for a sin offering if that is their regular hand to write with. And if that left-handed person wrote with their right hand, they would not be liable to a sin offering. That is also kila achar yad. It's a backhanded manner for them of writing. Where the Mishnah says whether he wrote with his right or his left hand, it is, according to our commentators, speaking about somebody that is ambidextrous. And an ambidextrous person it would make no difference whether he wrote with his right hand or left hand. In both cases, he will be liable to a sin offering. Now the Mishnah continues, Bein mi shnei sammonios, whether he wrote the 2 letters with 2 different forms of ink. It could be an ink and a dye. Nevertheless, by the writing of the 2 letters, even in different colors or with different materials, with different ink, he will be liable to a sin offering. And the Mishnah, this section concludes, B'chol lashon, no matter which language, even if the letters were Roman or Greek or the letters of any other language, he will be liable to a sin offering if he did this unwittingly on the Shabbat. And the Mishnah 3 now continues, Omar Rabbi Yossi, said Rabbi Yossi, Lo chivu shtei oisios. Our sages did not attach a penalty making the person liable for a sin offering. Shtei oisios, if the person wrote 2 letters, elo mishum roishem, except on account of the act of making a mark. Shekoch oyu koisvin al karshei amishkon, leida ezoi ben zugoi. Shekach oyu koisvin, for that was the way they would write al karshei amishkon, on the upright beams that were held together to make the temple sanctuary. And each of the beams had a mark on it or a letter, leida ezoi ben zugoi, in order to know which was its partner, which was its other half, adjacent to which other beam was it to be. So once again, we see how our sages are learning out the labors that are prohibited on the Shabbat from the labors that were involved in the making of the temple sanctuary. The 39 labors which were analyzed by our sages to be the labors involved in the sanctuary. So Rabbi Yosef is saying that on the beams, it was not necessarily that they actually had Hebrew letters to distinguish one from the other, so we'd know which was which, where they were to be positioned when the sanctuary would be re-erected after the traversing through the wilderness. It could be simply a mark that would enable the Levites to determine which one went next to the other. So we are learning from our Mishnah how our sages actually learned out these laws from the written text of the Torah. Now, so what Rabbi Yossi is actually saying is that even if the person did not write an actual letter, but he wrote a mark that is interpreted as a message and a letter, the person will be still liable. That is a stricter view of the halacha, and that is not actually the psak, that is not the halacha as it comes down to it. To us, it is like the Tanakama, like the sages in the earlier part of the Mishnah, who say they need to be letters to make the person liable to actual writing. Omar Rabbi, said Rabbi Judah the Prince, the author of the Mishnah, Motzinu Shem Koton Mishem Godel. We do find a small, short name that is actually a full name that may be coming out of a longer, greater name. Shem Mishimon. The two letters of the name Shem, which was the name of the senior son of Noah, is the first two letters of the longer name Shimon. Shimon, second son of Jacob. Shmuel, likewise, Shem is the first two letters of the name Shmuel, and it in itself is a whole name. Noach Minohor, the Hebrew name Noah, is the first two letters of Nahor, who is the brother of Abraham. Don Midoniel, the two letters Dalet Nun spell out the name of the tribe Dan, a fully fledged name, the first two letters of the longer name Daniel. God Mi Gadiel, likewise the Hebrew name God, which has the connotation of mazal, of a special fortune. Mi Gadiel, from the longer name that is found in scripture of Gadiel. So that is to say that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi is adding here that even if a person intended to write out the full name, but he only got as far as the first two letters, where the first two letters make up a word or a name in themselves, he would already be liable. If the two letters that he did write, even though it's not the full word that he intended to write, if the two letters do make up a meaningful word in some other place, then he is liable. So now going on to Mishnah Dalet. The Mishnah enumerates a number of conditions that might be fulfilled that would still render the person liable to a sin offering if he did the labor of writing on the Shabbat. HaKosef shtei oisiyos behelem echod chayov. If a person wrote the two letters behelem echod in one state of concealment, in other words, he wrote both of them while he was not aware it is the Shabbat today, Chayav, he is liable to the sin offering. That is fulfillment of the conditions of the prohibition that the two letters would have to be both written while he was not aware it was Shabbat. If, as we saw in the previous chapter, if a person threw an object and after it left his hand, he he suddenly realized it's Shabbat, then that is no longer considered to be an unwitting transgression, because he's already aware that what has been done is forbidden while it's still happening. All the more so if he was writing 2 letters and he wrote 1 letter not realizing it's Shabbos. When he suddenly remembers, he goes on and writes the 2nd letter. He would not be liable to a sin offering because the 2nd letter was written when he knew it already it was Shabbos. That would be a flagrant violation for which a sin offering is not sufficient atonement. Kosav b'dioi, b'sam, b'sikro, b'komos, u'v'kankantom, u'v'chol dover shehu roishem. Kosav b'dioi, whether the person wrote with ink, b'sam, some would be some concoction that was made for writing purposes. Sikro is some kind of scarlet stain that might be used for writing. Komos and kankantom are 2 ingredients of inks that are mentioned in the writings of our sages. The komos is considered to be some kind of dust that is black or earth that is black in color. Others say that the komos is some kind of resin that comes out of trees, a natural oil that may come out of trees. Kankantom is interpreted as a vitriol, which would make a stain on the appropriate medium. No matter what the person writes with, shehu roishem, where it actually makes a mark, and our Mishnah has cited items that will stay. Since, as we saw earlier, to qualify to be a prohibited melacha, the effects of the action have to remain. Al shnei koslei zoviois. If the person wrote on 2 walls that are adjacent to one another in a corner, so that the 2 letters are actually going to be able to be read together, even though they're on each one is on a different wall, they can be seen to be together. And likewise, al shnei luchei pinkos, if they were written on the 2 tablets of 2 separate tablets of what in Mishnah times was a notebook. The actual pinkas was used by businessmen to make quick notes of themselves. It would be a thin layer of wax held on sign of a small containing tray, and the person would make incisions into the wax to write his notes, and then the wax could be melted and used again for subsequent messages. So even though the 2 letters were on different tablets of the pinkas of this notebook, since they are connected with one another and being read together, that makes the person liable. Al shnei luchos pinkos v'hem nehegin zeh zeh, where they are read together, one with the other, chayov, that act of writing carries the liability for the violation of the Shabbat. Continuing now with Mishnah Dalet, the 4th Mishnah, akosev al besoroi chayav. If a person went to write on his own skin, he would be chayav, he'd be liable to a sin offering if he did that on the Shabbat unwittingly. Hamasoret al besoro, but if the person made incisions into his skin, he's scratching them with some sharp implement. Rabbi Eliezer mechayev chatos. Rabbi Eliezer holds that making such an inscription on the skin would be considered a form of writing. But Rabbi Yoshua exempts the person from liability for this, for violation of the forbidden labor of writing, because Rabbi Yoshua does not consider that scratching marks on one's skin, even if in the form of letters, qualifies as kotev, as actual writing. So we've just heard how and the halacha is like Rabbi Yoshua, that although it would be forbidden to make such scratches on one's skin, it would not qualify as the labor of kotev. So in the previous Mishnah, we heard about what happens if a person writes with something where the mark remains. However, Mishnah Hey, the fifth Mishnah, kosav b'mashkin, if the person wrote with some kind of beverage, even if a beverage that leaves a mark like a juice of berries or some other thing which will leave a stain, but peiros, or if it was with the waters of fruits, that is, say, with some kind of fruit juice, ba'avak derachim, if it was simply the person wrote using the dust of the highways, ba'avak asofrim, or if they wrote using the dust of the scribes when they wanted to dry what they had written on the parchment, they would cast dust on it. If the person wrote with anything that does not endure, potter, the person is exempt, because as we have seen, the effects of the malacha have to remain. And when a person writes with these transient objects, then if they, for example, on the beach, they were to make letters in the sand, they will not remain for very long. Likewise with the dust on the highway. So these are not considered to qualify for the violation of the melacha. So with that, we will today conclude our study of the Mishnah. We will take this up again with the help of God in our coming session. My dear friends, with that we come to the conclusion of our studies for today, and we will, with the help of God, be resuming on Sunday after the Shabbat. So I do wish you Shabbat Shalom U'Varach, a good and a blessed Shabbat from here in Yerushalayim to you wherever you are sharing in these studies. Have health and strength and blessing and success. Shalom from Yerushalayim and Shabbat Shalom.
Ka ye ye liach li tzor